Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, May 13th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about environmentally friendly containers for selling starts. If there is a place to get all the information for each seed, like to germinate them and such, and an ode to audio on farms. So let's do it. All right. Well, hello, Tuesdayers. Welcome. Fun fact that today marks our 150th episode of the show, almost 8 months of producing this podcast 5 days a week, which is wild. I told Mike the other day, in terms of word count for the notes alone for the show, it is basically the equivalent of writing a book every 3 months. So put another way, this show is almost 3 books old. And I like that because my publisher said I cannot do an audio version of the Living Soil Handbook. So I guess you could just think of this show as the free audio book that never was. But like if the script was not very well edited and I was allowed to, more dad jokes than any book publisher would ever allow you. Yeah. But audio is just such an incredible medium, especially for farmers. I am a longtime radio fan, and when podcasts burst onto the scene, I was hooked. I think my first podcast that I listened to regularly was the Stuff You Should Know podcast, which launched in the late aughts, I think. Hannah and I, when we lived off grid, listened to tons of NPR, especially on weekends. We even won a voice message recorded by the late, great Carl Castle back in 2014 or 2015, which is one of our more prized possessions. We would stay up late listening to UK basketball games by our small radio with Tom Leach and the late, great Mike Pratt. For a long time, I didn't have any easy way to charge my cell phone, so no listening to podcasts. And of course, I didn't own an MP3 player, but anyway, no listening to podcasts. But eventually, I got that worked out and could listen to podcasts in the field while I worked for hours and hours by myself. We had a newborn, so Hannah was kind of off and out of the picture for that period. I am not a TikTok person or really even a YouTube person. I don't watch a lot of those things because I don't love being locked into whatever it is I'm watching or listening to so much that I can't do anything else. But I love podcasts in that way, especially for farming, where I can set my body to task, turn on some nerdy podcast, and just go to work. At that time, this must have been like the 20 teens. The podcast we were all, like all farmers, were mostly listening to, besides cereal, of course, was the Farmer to Farmer podcast. Shouts to the late, great Chris Blanchard. And it was amazing to hear the stories of these other growers in other parts of the world, the country, talking about how they farmed. This, to me, is the genius of audio and farming, that I can bring it with me and get a massive amount of stuff done and learn about my craft all at once, or about soccer, or just listen to a story all in the same day. Often I will do more work just to finish an episode of whatever it is I'm listening to. Sometimes I miss just listening to the basketball games when we were, off grid and didn't have a TV or streaming or any sort of thing to actually watch them on. Because once you lock into an audio broadcast and the commentators are good, it feels very alive and visual. It's like being transported there in a totally different way. Of course, without question, and the science really backs this up, audio is more cognitively demanding than video, right? Like you can kind of just zone out to video. It does require a little bit more attention to listen to audio. Audio requires some bits of your imagination. It engages parts of your brain that deal with emotion. It is very immersive. In fact, on the negative side of things, I guess, audio can be so demanding and as to be distracting. I had a farmer tell me recently that he had to stop listening to podcasts because he felt like he was ignoring his crew and sort of sequestering off into his own little world. I felt that too, many times, especially when we had employees. I tried to avoid listening to podcasts so it wasn't too hard to get my attention, and so that I was also not like just skipping that human interaction. I could also see it being dangerous, not being able to hear, which is notably why I only ever have one single earbud in at any one time. Now, some might say you should also engage with the environment, enjoy the birds and all that stuff, which you absolutely should, unequivocally. But speaking from experience, you can also go completely bananas without some sort of stimulation from either a conversation or a story or music or whatever. Like I said, for a while there, I did not have any way to listen to podcasts or anything really but the birds, which sometimes meant nearly 8 hours of work with no one around, save for when I would go home for lunchtime. This was early in our farming business, and it was just Hannah and I, and all through that summer. It would be too hot to bring the baby kiddo out there for too long, and it would just be me. And if you want to go completely off your rocker, that's the recipe right there. Hot sun, alone, hard work, no stimulation, just great way to just completely lose your mind. Audiobooks and podcasts and radio helped in that way. Or if I was a person watching this for whom hearing was not an option, then having people around me to engage with would be even more important. In fact, one of the biggest consumers of podcasts are people like truck drivers, forklift operators, farmers, those that often spend hours and hours alone doing a very repetitive task, who can't easily, take their hands off the steering wheel or whatever, or eyes off the road or whatever it is that they're doing, but can to some extent listen to a podcast. Anyway, obviously, I think having people around is important, but even on a farm with employees, alone time will happen. So I'm a big fan, obviously, of podcasts. What say you? Let me know your thoughts on podcasts and farming/gardening, both good and bad things when those two things are combined. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, resources for what each seed needs, BRB.
Hello, you've reached Rough Draft Farmstead. This is Charles Castle from NPR's Wait, Don't Tell Me. If you'd like to leave a message for Hannah, Jesse, or further, please do so after the beep. Thank you for calling and have a wonderful day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. Does this show bring you, $2 or $5 worth of entertainment, of company every month? You can consider kicking in a few bucks over there. And I will get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to those Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Rochelle Bell. That's fun, Rochelle Bell, who writes, quote, "Hey, Jesse, first, thank you so much for what you and all the people that support you do to bring this content to us all. I'm an avid listener and love that I can count on seriously helpful, if not interesting, information and a giggle. Thank you. Here's my question. Is there a resource that you know of that is robust and thorough in sharing germination insights for all types of plants? A book that I have overlooked and can't find, a website. I start all of my plants by seed, some self-collected, which is super gratifying. And I have been building my own database of information for my notes over the years, but I'm still missing a lot of details. Moving on to our 10-acre property 2 years ago, I really have ramped up the volume of plants started each year, as well as the variety, and have had total losses of some in the germination/early seeding phase, which has been frustrating to say the least. The first year was a mouse's fault. I totally underestimated how rodents can get into literally any building here, but some this year seem to be getting stunted or not even germinating at all, ever. I find that seed packets include parts of the information, but not consistently all of it. Maybe I'm just a total nerd, but I want a spreadsheet that tells me all the things about starting each type of seed, cold stratification needed, how long, average days to germination, temperatures for germination, followed by temperatures for growing on, light, darkness. You get the point. Mostly annoyingly, I find conflicting information on packets across brands for the same plant. Maybe some types of plant seeds will tolerate light or darkness. Oh, and going online is unreliable. I get very conflicting information there, even from the ag departments at university. It seems my trial and error paired with note-taking is the only way to be certain, but maybe that's just the I'll-do-it-myself trailblazing tendency in my personality. So, long story short, do you know of a good resource for this? And to be clear, I'm looking for a resource that shares all seed types, including flowers, vegetables, fruits, herbs, perennials, annuals, all of it. Thank you so much for this awesome show. Sending love and wishes for quick recovery to your fellow Kentuckians with all this flooding, end quote. First, thank you for the kind words and the shouts to all the Kentuckians who have faced flooding this year. It's been immense. I've truly never seen anything like it, just brutal. And I know I've seen FEMA around, so I'm hopeful that these folks are able to get the help they need, because FEMA has been on the chopping block a bit lately. So hopefully that comes through for them. Anyway, so to answer your general question here, no, there is not, to my knowledge, such a compendium. And I say that with some confidence because at least for a while I was working on such a spreadsheet that I never finished, or at least haven't finished yet because I couldn't find such a spreadsheet. Now, it wasn't going to include flowers or perennials, but I wanted to get every vegetable in there, tips and important nuances for germination temperatures and all that stuff. And perhaps one day I will finish it. But what I was finding in the research for it was that, kind of like you said, the information is all over the place. I found myself deep in scientific papers looking for clues that would lead me to accurate information on optimal germination temperatures and conditions for certain crops. And I mean, ultimately, I've just landed on you probably do just have to do your own notes and keep track of your germination temperatures and your success rates. Now, to be fair, one of the things that makes this so complicated is that sometimes the same types of seeds do have different optimal germination temperatures to some extent based on perhaps like how and where they were bred. However, by and large, the temperatures for each crop should be within the same range, more or less. Like lettuce is not going to venture too far out of that 60 to 70 degree Fahrenheit range. That's like 15 to 21 Celsius. Pretty much all the lettuces will go into thermal dormancy around 85 Fahrenheit or 29 Celsius, and that's pretty universal. The key for you will be the keys we always say when it comes to germinating: consistent temperatures, right planting depth, good humidity, light if needed for our positively photoblastic buddies. Usually when I need some good tips quickly, though, I will just consult Johnny Selected Seeds website, who has generally good information on growing for each of the seeds they sell. They'll give you the germination temperature and any sort of considerations. Who knows, though? Maybe one day I will complete my spreadsheet for you all. It is just a weirdly daunting task to ensure that the information I was finding was actually correct. Like I said, I found myself like deep in scientific literature looking for germination temperatures and then following those citations to see how they came to that conclusion and looking a little bit of methodology, and it would take hours and hours and hours for each individual crop. So needless to say, I kind of ran out of steam on that one, but I think it would be helpful. Anyway, I know that doesn't exactly give you the answer you were hoping for, but perhaps it does tell you that I too have yet to see such a thing, but there's clearly a need for it. Maybe someone in the comments has located one or has resources they prefer over others. Let us know. And otherwise, up next, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, will folks buy plant starts and soil blocks? Maybe. Be right back. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still using QuickBooks for your farm's bookkeeping? You're wasting time and losing money. Farm finances can be overwhelming, but they don't have to be. FarmRaise Tracks is the all-in-one tool built just for farmers. Manage expenses, prep for taxes, run payroll, and plan for the future without spreadsheets or stress. Just clear, organized insights to keep your operation thriving. Thousands of farmers trust Tracks to make smart financial decisions all year long. It's time you did too. Use code NOTILL20, that's all caps, no spaces, NOTILL20 for 20% off the life of your membership at farmraise.com. Today's episode of Growers Daily is also brought to you by Ring of Fire. What if you could turn your brush problem into black gold? The Ring of Fire biochar kiln is your spring tool for soil transformation, converting woody debris into high-quality biochar in just hours. Biochar will kickstart your compost, retain water and nutrients in your soil, and provide habitat for beneficial microbes. Now $19.95 with flat rate shipping. Their spring sale runs through June. Don't wait to boost your soil and optimize your inputs. Visit ringofire.earth/growers now to learn more. Also, for more information on biochar, check out the No-Till Market Garden podcast interview with Kelpie Wilson, inventor of the Ring of Fire kiln, that we will link in the show notes. All right, back to the show. All right, so someone asked me not that long ago if people would buy plants that were just in soil blocks. Like, would people feel weird about buying tomato plants if they were just in a block or a ball of soil? Or what sort of alternative options are there to hundreds or perhaps thousands, depending on your scale, of plastic pots? Okay, so I have somewhat of a short answer and a more nuanced one. The short answer is that yes, people will buy plants that are just in soil blocks, but they don't love it. The big reason for that is just simply that people, at a farmer's market or somewhere out wherever you're selling them, don't particularly want to handle a giant block of soil. Now, if you're standing there and have a way to package or handle the plants efficiently for them, that helps a lot. But most people do not feel comfortable just grabbing a block of soil with a plant in it for the fear of getting dirty, perhaps, but also possibly just breaking the block. It's not clear that they'll hold together quite like a plastic container would. So if your plan is to sell soil blocks, consider wrapping them somehow. Maybe just some craft paper would do. Making some signage explaining how soil blocks would work would also be helpful and why they are awesome. Bringing boxes for people to use for carrying them, all of that stuff will help. I think people could get excited about soil blocks, but you do have to meet them halfway and make it easy and convenient for them to purchase them and take the soil blocks with them. Now, there are biodegradable containers you could use, and you just purchase those and use those instead. And people may indeed appreciate those, though the expense will be higher and have to be calculated into your costs. I mean, that same thing applies to individually wrapping the plants in craft paper too, though. Make sure you are charging adequately for the labor involved there. I don't have specific advice on which of the biodegradable options makes the most sense, but I think I would look for wholesale options and really research it for the best cost and best product. You don't want them disintegrating before you even get to market with them. You want to make sure that it will hold up and that they will look nice. All that said, if you were really good at selling, you could entirely get away with just using soil blocks, sell them as plastic free, and or have a sign that says, ask us why we don't use plastic containers for our plant starts or whatever. And then be prepared to explain the benefits of soil blocking, like how the soil blocks don't, for instance, allow for root wrapping, causing the plants to get what's called root bound, which means that soil blocks put their energy into growing a strong plant instead of winding the roots up and around them. Perhaps explain that they are also easy plug and play plants with a nice ball of soil attached to get them established and ready to go immediately in the soil. I would recommend giving people craft paper or paper towels or something to pick the blocks up without getting their hands dirty. I emphasize this part because we used to sell on Sundays a lot, so people would often come in their Sunday best and were not exactly itching to get their church clothes dirty. Transport will also be something you will have to figure out for yourself, like how do you get them to market? But that goes for selling any plant starts. Sometimes finding a rack that fits the back of your van is the way to go to be able to stack them. Just make sure it's sturdy as all get out and the plants can't just slide off the rack into the back of your van, making a giant mess. Anyway, I think that will be it for Tuesday. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is now officially a 501c3 nonprofit, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. And tax deductible, I think it's worth saying that twice. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook of the Seed Farmer at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of May, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to, actually, these are our earthworms from April. Oksana Ratowski, we remember this one. Oksana. Xavier O'Luan, nailed it. Mark Stanley, John Rowe, David Ganaway, Estevan Felix, and Colleen Rainey. All right, so this is going to kick off the story for the week, which I think, this seems clear to me that this is a group of cave explorers who are on a sort of expedition in, let's say, Peru, probably caves in Peru, certainly potatoes, but if they were on an expedition for great potatoes, I think Peru would be the place to go. But anyway, they're on a mission to Peru to dive into this to get into this newly discovered cave deep in the mountains. But on their way, their plane has to make an emergency landing, and they manage to land on this small Cessna in kind of a small field in the mountains, but they have no idea where they are. The instruments all go out. The plane won't start. Like, everything is going wrong, but they do, all of them kind of collectively, see a cave off in the distance staring at them. A cave none of them recognize from their knowledge of Peruvian caves. And that is where this story begins. All right. Thanks for listening and or watching. We will see you tomorrow for, what is today? Okay, so today's Tuesday, so tomorrow's Wednesday. Here's hoping. All right, bye.